The meeting will start in a few minutes, folks. Margaret, whenever you're ready.
Okay,
Oh,
as soon
it's
as I get
streaming. Okay, good.
my quorum back on, we will get the meeting started. Thank you.
You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yep. we
6.
have
Yep.
Yep. Just Hank. We're just waiting for Hank. Okay. Very good. And Kate. Okay. Are we all set, Steve?
Good to go.
Perfect. Okay. So I'd like to call the meeting of the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee to order. And I thank everyone for bearing with us with the slight delay in getting our technology issue straightened out. We will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone could stand, and Susan will hold the flag for us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Okay, I just wanted to announce that our meeting tonight is being live streamed and recorded by Templeton Community TV. So a big thank you and shout out to TCTV. It is on their Facebook page and on their YouTube channel, and will be available on demand after our meeting. Just to go over who is on the phone, who is on the meeting, my apologies. For the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee, we have Mrs. Robichaud, Mr. Marks, Mrs. Matson, Mrs. Kojal, Mrs. Trifilo, Mr. Mason, and myself, Mrs. Hughes. We also have Dr. Casavant, our superintendent. We have Kate Calise, our assistant superintendent, Anne-Marie Geister, our business manager, and Susan Varney, our wonderful executive admin assistant. We also have Lisa Parker on the line for the NDEA. And we also have Jack McCarthy and Maria Popolo, I hope I pronounced that right, with the MSBA, which we'll introduce shortly to everyone. So with that being said, the first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes of September 2nd, 2020. They were sent out for everyone to review. So when someone's ready, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 2nd, 2020.
So moved.
So I have a motion from Mr. Mason. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Mrs. Trifilo. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Robichaud?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Marks?
Did you get it?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Matson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal?
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo?
Yes.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
And Mrs. Hughes says yes. So unanimous, we've approved the minutes of September 2nd. Next up, we need to approve the meeting minutes of September 10th. When someone is ready, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 10th, 2020.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Trifilo. Do I have a
So
second?
moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Mason. Any
Second.
questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes, so that was unanimous to approve the minutes of September 10th, 2020. Next up were bills and payroll, and I don't think there was anything, was there anything attached? I'm looking at Mrs. Geister. Was there anything for us to review that I missed?
Yes, I just put it up a little while ago.
Okay, I printed this before it got up there then. So when someone is ready, I would entertain a motion to recommend accepting the bills and payroll warrants as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
Well, I think I have Mr. Mason. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mrs. Kojal. Any questions or comments or concerns? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes, so that was unanimous. Next up, we do have an appearance, and this was scheduled within our 48 hours, so it did not make it on the agenda, but it did come up, and we're going to move it into the appearance section, which is next. And I'm going to go over, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw this over to Dr. Casavant to do the introduction and talk about the appearance, so thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jack McCarthy, who is the Executive Director of the Massachusetts School Building Authority. He's made it out this way a few times since I've been here, instrumental in really helping us when the project started to stall. It was that famous Good Friday back about 2 years ago at this point, when we were trying to get the project together. But recently what's happened is because of the reconfiguration that we've gone through and some of the financial woes that we also experienced over the last 2 FYs, we've had to reconfigure, as everyone knows, and we've had to relocate students, et cetera. And that begged a lot of different questions. And one of them, of course, was that what ramification would it have on the Templeton Elementary Schools, the monies, right? So the grant, the core project grant. And so we've been in communication, and a lot of this has really slowed down because of COVID, like everything. It was back in March when we were doing the budget. So we were able, and thanks to Susanna Whips and Ann Goby, who helped me just kind of get everybody together, which was fantastic. They were a big help. But we were able to have a conference call today, and what I asked, and he was very kind in order to do this, is he suggested that he'd come to the school committee meeting tonight to really kind of lay out some of the points that we discussed in terms of the grant and some other factors. So, Jack, hopefully I gave you enough run up to that, and I could certainly do some other, fill in some loose areas. But if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Chris. And again, I want to echo the thanks to Representative Whips and Senator Goby for facilitating the meeting this afternoon. And so, after in the middle of the meeting, it occurred to me that there's been some misinformation out there, and probably the best thing to do is for me to come and tell you where we are rather than, hear it secondhand from somebody else. And what I'm going to tell you tonight will be followed up with a letter detailing it as well. My general counsel is working on that letter, so we should have that to you in a couple of days. But so my understanding is that there was some claim out there that the MSBA, if you closed the Phillipston school and switched kids over to the Templeton school, then that we would be taking back some of the grant money or not giving you our final payments. And that is just not true. Okay. My recollection is there's about $1.6 million left on the grant, and you'll get that when you have a final audit. But there is no idea, quite frankly, that the MSBA would be looking to take money back from the Templeton Elementary School project. I just want to just tell you our mission at the MSBA is to partner with Massachusetts communities to promote the design and construction of educationally appropriate, flexible, sustainable, and cost-effective public school facilities. So, and the reason I said that is just to highlight flexible. We don't expect school districts to, have the same number of kids at the same grade configuration, from now till eternity when we participate in a project. And, we want these buildings to be flexible so that you can be flexible when the needs arise that you have to reconfigure your population. And so you're not the first person, not the first district to do this. It happens all the time. So I'm not sure how the information came out incorrectly, but you have nothing to concern yourself with in getting the full amount of that grant money that obviously that you can show me that you have eligible costs for. However, let me just give you the caveat. In the Phillipston school, we did do a green repair project some 10 years ago. And we do have a rule that if you're going to take a building out of circulation, if it's no longer going to be used for educational purposes, then we would, claw back. I think, and we would do it proportionately. So we have a 20-year rule. So I think you're about halfway through. The grant was around 70,000. So at the most, it would be somewhere between 35 to 40,000 if you don't continue to use that building for educational purposes. I know that you had a proposal prior to this, an early intervention center that would clearly qualify as, continued education use. I'm not saying that's the only one, but I know that you talked about that. So if you want to go forward with that, you can be secure in the knowledge that that would be acceptable to the MSBA for a continued educational purpose. And there's many others. And, if you come up with another plan, I'm sure Chris will call, we'll figure it out. But, it's not I don't like to take money back from people, because the money that comes back, affects students in a bad way. And I'm in the business of helping students, not to try to hurt students. So we'll work with you, in any way that we can to make sure that everything is successful, that we partner with you. I hope I cleared up, whatever misinformation or concerns that were out there. Madam Chair, I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but if it is, I'm happy to take questions.
Certainly. Are there any questions from the school committee or the administration? I don't think we have any. I think you were quite clear, and we appreciate you coming on to share that message. Oftentimes things get lost in translation, so it was nice to hear it straight from your mouth. We really appreciate you taking the time not only to meet earlier today with the group that you did, but also to come out here tonight and give us that information. We appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I'd also like to I publicly thank Diane Sullivan, who I don't know how many letters back and forth or emails. She has been point on this and was really my contact person. So I want to make sure I know she's not on this call, but I want to make sure that I point out that she was, we did a lot of talking between her and I over the past, oh gosh, I don't know, it had to be 3-4 months. And of course, COVID interrupted a few of those things, but I want to make sure I say that as well.
Yeah, Diane constantly continues to make me look good.
Right. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Jack? I don't see any, so thank you again for taking the time out to come and pass along that message. We appreciate it, and we appreciate everything that the MSBA has done. I know that I can probably speak for this entire committee, thinking back to all the tours we've had and being able now to see that building open into its second year, just how wonderful the facility is and how far the architecture and the design has changed over the years. And it's a wonderful facility, and we appreciate the partnership that we've had with the MSBA to get that done in the town of Templeton. So thank you.
Great. Thank you all, and good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Right. Okay, next up would be public input. Looking at Mrs. Varney, I know we didn't have any right before we started, and I just wanted to know if anything had come in the interim.
Let me just check. I don't believe so. Nothing.
Okay. All right, so we'll keep an eye on our live stream feed, and if a question comes up that we're able to address, we will. Otherwise, we'll keep a lookout and be able to respond back when we can. Next up is the NDEA. We have Mrs. Parker here. If you want to give us an update and tell us how things are going.
Hello. Actually, we're back in school, and it's a great feeling to be able to actually say that. The teachers were back 10 days before the students, and we had a lot of professional development time, planning time, time to work individually as well as with grade levels and cross grade levels. So that was great. We had some planned PD that was structured time, and some of it was flexible time. So that was greatly appreciated by the teachers. And I know it made a lot of us feel that coming back multiple days before the kids is really helpful to us. And we just had our first cohort come in Monday and Tuesday. And talking with the people from the high school, I know it sounds like things went very well there, and the teachers were excited to have the kids back, and the kids were excited. Elementary school, I feel like it went off without a hitch. We were worried about drop off in the morning and busing, and it just seemed like it went great both days. The kids were amazing. I mean, I know things, they're just getting comfortable. It's maybe the honeymoon phase, but the kids were wonderful. The teachers, we had little glitchy things happen with technology and trying to balance kids in front of you with kids on their computers at home. But I think if everybody's patient with us, things are going to work out, and hopefully eventually we'll have them all back at once.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I know, as a parent, I've seen my son, he was remote for the first 2 days. So like at the high school level, that he really seemed things went off without a glitch on his end, which was good. So it's good to hear that the teachers have found all of the planning and hard work that everyone has done has really come to fruition with having the kids back in school. So thank you, and thank you to all the teachers and staff for making this happen this week.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Right. Anyone have any questions for Lisa at this point? Nope, I think we're good. So we'll move on to the next item. We're going to talk about the FY21 budget. We'll start off discussing our 1/12 budget and where we are and what that means to us. I know that we've been talking about, the what ifs, if we have to meet that number, and I'll let Dr. Casavant speak to that. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the district-wide town meeting once that's done. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Dr. Casavant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, it's a dubious honor to be able to say that we've got some experience with 1/12 over the last couple FYs, but really, ultimately, what it becomes is a challenge of cash flow. So in the very beginning, in July and much of August, we don't have a lot of expenditures because salaries haven't really started. So, but once the end of August and September start, then teachers are back, paras are back, and so your salary starts to, of course, your expenses start to increase because of salaries. So what we've always been trying to guard against is or watching very closely is how close that line of cash flow and expenses and how close they come. What exasperates the issue obviously is the virus and what we've had to do. And yes, we've had grant opportunities and we've applied for them and we've received them. But what a lot of these grants do not take into account is that we actually have to get extra staff for monitors and there's a whole host of things. So it really does create a financial hardship in a sense under normal conditions. So as we went through and we were hopeful that the Phillipston special town meeting would, approve / appropriate the requested amount. Once that didn't happen, I had to go through the painstaking process of reducing in force, riffing, laying off 3 paraprofessionals. And that's on top of 5 positions that we just did not fill on top of that prior. So in essence, 3 folks, were told that they didn't have a job, a week and a half ago. Moving forward, again, it's really kind of a race against time in a sense. What does it look like moving as the farther we go into the school year on this 1/12, the harder it is to keep a safe distance between cash flow and of course expense. So what looms, and I don't usually say such things because I don't believe in stoking the fires of this, but it is a critical vote that comes up on Saturday, quite frankly, because if it should not, if we should not prevail in getting the budget that of course has been already unanimously voted in Templeton, and we're waiting on Phillipston, the main number, then we're going to have to look to other staff cuts. We're going to have to look to opportunities such as sports, music, unified arts. And it could get to the point in which if you have to keep cutting staff, which we don't have a lot of at this point. Remember, we had to cut multiple positions just to get to this level. This is pre-COVID. Then you're looking at a situation in which you'll be forced to go into full remote because we just won't have the staff on station or in the buildings to actually provide coverage, education, etc. I say that because what we know is that our community, when we asked them, how do you want to be educated? How do you want your children to be educated? 80+% of our, school, parents and guardians said they want them in school. As a matter of fact, they want them in full days. Never mind just the configuration we have now. We do have a plan for that. This will be cohort. We can do lunches, but we can't even make those moves yet because we're too unstable in terms of our future. So as of right now, we've made cuts in order to kind of stem off the closing of the flow versus expense, but the further we go, the harder it's going to be. And this really affects quite a bit in terms of, well, staff and student safety, but certainly instruction, et cetera. So that's what we're hopeful that we don't have to go that far because it'll just be, it really will be devastating from a lot of respects.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Dr. Casavant on that? All right, I don't see anybody. I know we've had this discussion multiple times in the past. It's unfortunate that we're nearing the reality of having to look at these potential cuts. They're not in the best interest of any of the students in either town. So to your point, I hope that our parents and our community members come out on Saturday, which is a good segue into our next 2 topics about the FY21 budget, which is the district-wide town meeting. The first topic was just the moderator selection. We met last Thursday and did not have a candidate to be brought forth, excuse me. So I know that Dr. Casavant, you had been working to try and find someone, and I believe you were successful in finding someone that we can bring forth as a name to the select boards. And we have a meeting scheduled for 1:30 on Saturday afternoon prior to the district-wide town meeting, where the 2 select boards will vote on the moderator selection. So thank you for reaching out to all of your contacts and finding someone who not only is available and willing, but also apparently has some background and skills at being a moderator.
And I will say, and I don't want to, I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say the name, so I won't, but This person is a moderator and has done a lot of work in this area, has done a lot of research on our district, et cetera. So I really believe after 2 conversations that we're in great hands in terms of the breadth of knowledge that this person has. So yeah, I think it'll work out fantastic.
Great, thank you. And the last thing about the district-wide town meetings, I did, again, 2 o'clock on Saturday, the 19th, that's this Saturday. It'll take place on the athletic field. And if I could just turn it back over to you, Dr. Kazmit, maybe just give a quick talk through of the procedure for people. They'll park out front and what that's going to look like.
So just quickly, it'll in the very beginning, it'll look a lot the same. Handicap parking will be in the rear. General parking will be in the front. The general folks will come right in through the middle school doors as they have for years, but they'll just transition straight through to really the backyard of the district towards the athletic field. There, the clerks will be set up to register voters, etc. The bleachers, as you know, are handicapped accessible, so folks will, with any type of ambulatory issues, concerns, can certainly access that, and everyone else can sit there as well. We've already spaced off the bleacher rows to give proper distance. Under normal conditions, the bleachers can hold 1,000 people. Of course, that is, just people being very close to each other. We figure even with subtracting out a few of the benches, we'll easily get 200 to 250 people on the bleachers. We're also going to have seating on the lawn just in front of the bleacher, because where the school committee and moderator will be roughly where the hash marks are on the football field, roughly about the 30-yard line, etc. So it'll give plenty of room there. It'll be plenty of room, of course, in the bleachers, and the sound system will be set up. There'll be 3 mics, one at the rear of the bleachers, one on the field, and of course, probably a couple, at the table. So also, if I may, because it'll also be part of the food drive. So folks who do come, please bring a canned good. It's for the food pantry here in Templeton, and there'll be more information about that. But that in its basic terms of how we have it set up. And of course, we had a meeting with both clerks, the fire, and everyone, Board of Health, and everyone approved the plan. And that information has been given to both towns at this point and is on our website and Facebook page.
Great, thank you. And I believe it's a BYOC, bring your own chair, if you'd like lawn seating.
Bring your own chair. Yes, BYOC, please.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And thank you for coordinating all that planning. I know that a lot of discussion was had on the best way to set this up, and it sounds like we have a very good plan in place. Anyone have any questions about the district-wide town meeting or anything at this point? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on then. We're going to go to the business manager's report. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Geister, and we'll look at the numbers first, and then we'll go into the bus contract, because I know that's something we need to discuss.
So I attached all of the normal reports that we normally do. I wanted to make sure that you took a look at the 1/12 expenditure report, which shows that we did not spend everything we were allotted in July and August, which is good because we can carry it over from month to month, the portion that we didn't spend. So we're going into the time frame now that our salaries and teachers are all back, that now's the time where we really have to monitor that number really carefully. So I just wanted you to take a look at that, make yourselves aware, like, it's there, we're doing good, but it's something that we're going to have to watch over the next few months. As far as the regular reports, our spending is a little bit slower during the summer because the teachers aren't here. And I think with COVID, it was just a little bit slower all around. So there's not a lot of expenses during the summer months. But when I report out next month in September, you'll see a lot more of those purchase orders have been processed. And as far as the grants go, we've applied for all the ones that we could. All of our entitlements have been approved, And we have a couple of the COVID ones. We have the reopening grant, which is $291,000. That is the $225 a kid one. So you can see that on the report that we have applied for that. It has been approved, and basically it's going towards substitutes and PPE and plexiglass, lots of plexiglass. And that one has to be spent by December 31st. There's another COVID grant. It's the CARES money. That one, we don't have to spend that all by December. It's good until June 30th. So the state's advising use the one that expires on December 31st first, and then go into your other one after that. So those are really only the two kind of unusual things that you might see on that. All the other ones are just our regular grants, and we've applied. We've gotten a couple first payments on some of them. Most of them, we don't even have the first payment yet. They're just starting rolling now.
Great. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Geister at this point on the numbers and where we are to date? Nope, I think your explanation worked very well. Thank you. If you want to give us an update on the bus and what we're looking at to do with our bus company.
So when we put out a bid for the busing, we put it out for obviously 180 school days in the school year. So that is how our contract is written up. We have a price per bus per day for 180 days. Our new company, JP McCarthy out of the Brookfields, has asked if we would consider the lost days that don't, like, he's actually only transporting, like, when I figured it out, he's only actually transporting kids 135 days of the 180. He's asking for 35% of what our normal payment would be for the 10 days prior. And then there's 35 Wednesdays from here till the end of the year that are not going to have transportation on them. He's asking for 75% of the normal cost for those days. And the reason between the two different percentages is the 35% is just his overhead cost for his bus payments. And I don't know if anyone's seen our buses. They're brand new. They're really nice. Our drivers are quite happy with their new rides. And the other 40% is the driver portion, because he wants to make sure he can pay them and have them on hand if we go full remote, full in person, or we go to 5 days a week, the drivers will be available. So I don't know if you had a chance to look, but I attached a dollar amount, what all this equals out with all those different percentages. It's a difference of almost $64,000 we'd be saving, I guess, over what we would pay if they were driving 5 days a week, 180 days.
Does anyone have any questions for Anne Marie on I hope everyone had a chance to look at the spreadsheet that she had put together. Did anyone have any questions about the recommendation to make this change? I had just had one question. This assumes that we won't be coming back on any Wednesdays. I'm assuming, though, that if things change, and let's knock on wood that they do, that at some point, if we can get back 5 days a week, they would come back looking for the full payment for those Wednesdays.
Correct. And it's a per day. So like my bill, honestly, normally you have a contracted amount, you're using all the same buses. It's pretty easy to figure out. You take your total for the year and divide it by 10 months. It's not going to be quite so easy this year. It's probably going to be a little bit different figure each month based on the number of days in the month and how many of those we've missed or whatever. So yeah, it's all subject to change depending on how we go to school.
Okay, great. So, and the reason I wanted to clarify is because I think whatever motion that we would take, if the committee so wishes to accept this proposal from the bus company, that we speak in terms of, that provision that whatever the days, for any Wednesdays that we don't go to school, we'll pay 75%. This way we're covered if it happens that we can get back in. So, anyone have any other questions?
Margaret, along those same lines, I know we haven't gotten there yet, but we are coming into the winter months. So we haven't really talked about it, but the same thing in the winter months, I would assume now that we're set up to go virtual and everything, we may close a lot easier. Would it be the same thing on those days, Anne Marie? Would those be per day basis, or would that only be based on the Wednesdays?
I think that he would be looking, if we have a snow day that we are not going to make up, I'm sure he's going to be looking for the 75% of that day, because our contract is for 180 days.
Okay, did that answer your question, Jeff?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Anne Marie on the bus? Okay, seeing none. I'm just trying to think of the correct motion. So I think we could entertain a motion to reduce the payments to the bus company as per the proposal, which would be 35% of the contracted daily rate for the first 10 days prior to school. And then the 75% prorate for any of the Wednesdays or any other days, therefore, that would factor in that we do not use the buses. Does that make sense, Ms. Geister?
Sure does.
Okay, so I would, hopefully, Mrs. Varney, you got that down because I don't think I can repeat that. I would entertain a motion as such.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mrs. Kojal. Do I have a second? And I have a second from Mr. Mason. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Matson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes, so that was unanimous. So we have adjusted the rates for the bus company. Thank you, Mrs. Geister, and please extend the thanks. I know that our bus company, it was the one who actually came to us with this discussion, and please thank them on our behalf. Everything that you've mentioned about working with them has been wonderful so far. So if you could just relay our thanks to the bus company as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so with that, we're going to go into the school opening update. Votes may be taken. We just took a vote on one of those issues, which was the bus contract, so we jumped ahead, which is okay. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Casavant and whoever else wants to speak to. We had a list of things to discuss. We were going to talk just, I think Ms. Parker gave us a nice update on the teacher PD, but if we wanted to say anything else, how our first week of school went, talk a little bit about facilities, meals, the transportation, to hear about how the busing has gone so far. And I know sports is one of the issues. So Dr. Casavant, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you address those in whichever order you feel works best.
I will. I thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know if Ms. Calise wanted just to speak to the PD. If not, Kate, it's fine. I just didn't want to. You good? Or okay. So our 10 days were very well spent, and I think we've discussed this at our previous meeting. And so we continue to do it. We continue to keep learning. This is really different. And if you were in a rut, or if you're just kind of bored with how education was going, this year is really probably right for you. So along with other PD, we're all learning, parents, kids, all of us. So I think this is going to be, a year where we do a lot of learning, and I'm excited about that, actually, to be honest. When we started talking about returning to school, we didn't know how it was going to look. We just didn't. And so I could tell you that on Monday, I probably have not been as nervous as I was that day, just because we just didn't know what to expect. And it honestly, by all accounts, folks who called in or just were nice enough to stop me or just chat me up a little bit, it really went about as smooth as it could possibly have gone. It is the smoothest opening that I've ever been a part of. Now, we only had 1/3 of the students. So what I'm saying is that it felt eerie. The buildings are not full. I don't hear lockers slamming. It's just a different place. But we were so well prepared. I think that certainly had a lot to it. Our technology piece, I need to say this, is that, we certainly have been waiting kind of for that shoe to drop, and there have been glitches, but they have been fixed immediately. Our tech folks are literally going onto Zoom meetings, fixing, calling people. So that has been a real godsend, and Mike and his crew have done a fantastic job. Our facilities where we've really been focusing much of our attention, quite honestly, whether we're talking about figuring out lanes and signage and hand sanitizers and just all of those type of checks, the facilities are in really great shape. We know that we had a company come out to check all the air ventilators and from the roof all the way down, and all of our vents are working, and our airflow is good. So they're going to continue to do I want them to do a thorough check, but we're in really good shape there. Our meals update, it's gone well. There are meals that are prepared, ready to go as kids leave. It's lunch for that day and breakfast for the next. So if you are in person, all you do is just literally, it's a grab and go. Bags, food, grab, go. We have times that are set up once all the kids clear out of their buildings, that folks who are remote, either the cohort that's not live or full remote, they can come through. And because the state of Massachusetts extended the free lunch program, it's a win-win for everyone.
Chris,
sorry.
I just wanted to clarify. So
Yeah.
any student, doesn't matter status, is free to take a lunch
Yes.
with the breakfast included. So anyone
Yes,
can take that.
anybody. Now, what we put out there is that folks have got to fill out the forms, though, like for when this program ends, which is either December 31st or when the money runs out. So, if folks are eligible and they are going to be in need of that service, they're going to need to fill the forms out so that we then at that point can operate what I would say as we have normally. Transportation, busing has been a complete, it's been the bane of our existence. Anne Marie has probably redone those lists, I don't know how many times. When you're only busing 1/3 of the kids at one time, and stops have got to be manipulated in a certain way with bus passes and mailing them out. I mean, it has been, and of course they drop off, and I'm pointing, I don't know why, but they're in the central office parking lot. We have no parking back there. So that way the buses come in, they drop off, we sanitize the buses. Rick Moulton and his crew go in there and spray down the buses, and off they go for the next run and repeat in the afternoon. So transportation has done very well. We're already starting to see our times kind of line up. In any year, I don't care if it's a pandemic or a regular year, transportation takes a while to fine tune the routes, fine tune the stops, but we're well on our way to, and we're full. So at this point, all of our seats are filled at this point in time. Transportation, sports. So when we last discussed, athletics, we are not a full remote district, right? So we fall under the category that the superintendent can make that decision. And as I wrote to the school committee, I think it was late last week, I do believe that we should have sports, absolutely. After talking with a lot of different people, some of the things that turned because I was on the fence, I'll be very candid with you. I had a tough time, making that decision just because our primary job is this, safety and well-being of our students. But I do believe in the protocols will work. I think that the MIAA has done a nice job with the protocols of keeping everybody distanced and safe. Whether the sports look anything like they did pre-COVID, I got to be quite frank, I don't care. But meaning that, they're going to be able to compete. For me, it was honestly the AAU kind of mentality where many of my colleagues were saying, well, we're not really that big on athletics this year because many of our, you know, our star athletes, et cetera, are going to playing these AAU leagues. Well, we don't live in a community, nor do we live in an area that is very affordable. It's very, very expensive. And athletics, quite frankly, from the schools or the district's perspective, it might be the only opportunity that they have. So as I wrote to you, sports should happen. We've already contacted the coaches. There's going to be meetings. It's going to take a run up. It's going to take some time. We are waiting for, quite frankly, Murdoch to decide if they're going to have sports. They're full remote. How does that affect us? We are co-opt with soccer with them. We have the schedule. We have the coach. We have those things, but we need to see how that plays out in their school committee, which I think is tomorrow night, for me to have or for us to have a full picture moving forward. So as I said, it's my recommendation, and of course the decision to have sports, and we'll just keep an eye on it. And maybe I'll just pause there because I just gave a bunch of information on a whole bunch of topics. So I want to kind of slow it down and see if there are any questions.
Just real quick, I know you talk sports. Can you also speak to any other extracurriculars? I know like marching band is a big one as well. And just maybe add a little information about that as well. Yep,
I can. And so we definitely have conversations with the marching band. The criteria is pretty strict in terms of the distancing and all of those. But in talking with our folks, they feel really confident that they can do that. They can do it safely. They can do it. I mean, it's quite a bit. I think there's more regulations or rules around, I guess, band, quite frankly, than maybe even some of the sports. And I think they're worried about the instruments, et cetera. We are going to look into that. I'm going to say this again because I feel the need to, is that all hinges on next Saturday. A lot of this hinges on next Saturday. We're talking about stipended positions, et cetera. All being equal, though, those would be the next step. I know that I'm looking to my left. I can see comments coming to, about, well, what happens if my child is, full remote, and we've planned our child to be full remote. I think I realize that some people, children are full remote for a lot of reasons. And I think at this point, we're going to, I feel that it's really the parent decision. If they feel that they are well enough or the situation dictates that the reason why they are remote is not exactly completely and entirely medical, et cetera. I mean, it's hard for us to know. And we're going to give it a shot this season. I'll be very candid about this because we're outside. If in any sense that we feel that it's maybe putting people in jeopardy because of some health concerns, et cetera, we'll have to reevaluate the whole process, because if everything goes the way it's supposed to, football, I guess, will be outside in February. I don't know what that looks like, quite frankly, but we'll see. But basketball eventually happens. And, once you start going inside, I think that becomes, I don't know, another question, right? And so we'll have to kind of take this season by season. I feel more comfortable being about the outside at this point.
Great, thank you. And I did just want to put, this is varsity. We will not be having middle school sports, just because I know that a lot of people were having questions. So to clarify, this is varsity sports, middle school at this point. There will be no middle school sports. But again, as you said, we'll take the season by season and see what happens going forward.
Yeah, I think that this is the healthiest season that we could have right now. And I'll have to take a look, and we'll make those decisions as we go.
So with that being said, it is the superintendent's decision. I just want to make sure that there was no vote that you needed from the school committee on any of these points. I didn't think there was, but I just want to make sure. What questions or comments we covered? Dr. Kasvik covered a lot of different pieces of information. Does the school committee have about the reopening? Okay, I don't see anybody having any comments or questions. I would like to just thank everybody from, yourself, Dr. Casavant, your team, the administration, the teachers, the staff, for having a wonderful first few days. This is 2 days in person for the first cohort, remote learning for everybody else. And thank everybody for the hard work that went into it. It seems like, you're right, it went off. I don't want to say without a hitch, because there were certainly some issues that weren't even in our control, like some Google issues. But it really seemed to be conducive to making some learning happen and getting the kids back into the routine of going to school. So thank you for getting that.
I'm going to pass along that thanks. I wish that I could videotape, honestly, a first or second or kindergarten or any teacher doing morning meeting, trying to pay it, literally engage, the 20 boxes that may be in front of them, the 12 kids who are beyond the computer. It really is amazing to watch. And this is not something that anyone has done. I mean, people sound it's easy. No, it is not. This is not easy work. And I'll tell you, they have worked very hard and they're continuing to get better and better. So hats off obviously to the staff. We don't have any success without them. And so it really shows that they've worked hard about it. Really.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Because our next topic is school committee comments. So anyone have any comments on either reopening or anything else that they'd like to add?
No, I'm just actually curious. I know we talked a little bit about the coming back to school, and I know that we've done a lot of planning and a lot of training for both the teachers and the students. Just curious, I know you mentioned earlier that when the buses come in and unload them, we're going through and disinfecting them.
Mm-hmm.
Were there surprises, or how were the students actually going down the hallway? Was it good? Were there unexpected surprises that we didn't plan for, that we ran into, or how did that go?
So I have to tell you that I think that, much to our own, demise, we always plan for the worst, and we think about these things, and we don't give kids enough credit. So, we never give them enough credit. And we expected, who knows what we expected, kids taking masks and, just going. They were the calmest, bunch I've ever seen. I've just not seen 7 kids in a long time being transitioned down a hallway, being shown things. It just was but they were really in tune with what needed to happen. They understand the gravity of it. We also have the kids who are, they want to be here, right? So they're here. So I don't know if, I think that they surprised us once again. And I think that we need to remind ourselves that we got to give them a lot more credit. They did a lot of things right without even us telling them. They get it. I think that busing was always that'll always be kind of the wild card, and we'll just need to keep an eye on that. They were fine. The behaviors have been fantastic, but just in terms of moving forward and getting more kids on the bus, if that should happen, that's when it might be a little bit different. But so far, really, they've outdone themselves.
That's great to hear. Thank you to everybody for all the planning and everything, Chris.
Great. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along to our next order of business, which are some surplus items. So there was a list of items on the agenda, and I will read them off here, and I'll make a motion that I would entertain. So I would entertain a motion to move to surplus the items as presented. Outdated curriculum books from the high school, there's 156 SAT Vocabulary Power Plus Book 1, 123 SAT Vocabulary Power Plus Book 2, and 30 SAT Vocabulary Power Plus Book 4. None of those books are in use anymore. We have 70 copies of Edith Hamilton's Mythology that are very old, with broken bindings, missing pages, etc. And we never surplus the books that were replaced throughout the years. There are also 424 high school math books that are outdated, 53 2001 Algebra 1 books, 53 Algebra 1 Concept and Skills 2001 books, 73 2004 geometry books, 58 2003 geometry concept and skills books, 59 2004 algebra 2 books, 70 2008 algebra 2 concepts and skills books, 32 1998 calculus books, and 26 2006 SAT prep books. I would entertain that motion to surplus those items.
So moved.
And I have a motion by Mr. Marks. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Mr. Mason. Any questions or comments on that list? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes, so we have unanimously voted to surplus those books. Next up, we have an acceptance of a donation. So I would entertain a motion to accept the donation of a Yamaha YPT 300 electric keyboard with the power adapter. So I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Marks.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Ooh, I think Mrs. Kojal will go with. Any questions or comments on the donation? Seeing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Robichaud? Ooh, you muted yourself.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal?
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo?
Yes.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
And Mrs. Hughes says yes, so we have unanimously accepted the donation of the keyboard, and our thanks go out to the donor of that item. I believe that was the request that came from our music department, and I know it'll be put to very good use. Next up, there were no other items. We had our guest earlier with the 48 hours before the meeting that came up. There's no other items that I'm aware of. I'm going to throw it back over to Dr. Casavant for anything that he hasn't been able to report out on. If we've got any updates on the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee at this point, anything else that he would like to say?
I think I've pretty much covered. I do not, at this point, I have to say that I haven't reached out to this week just to see if that's been a discussion item at each board. I don't have an update on the RAC. But I think just given how the questioning went before, I don't think I have anything left to report out.
Great, thank you. And next up, we're going to go to a report by Ms. Calise on the STAR assessments, and then anything other with curriculum and instruction that you wanted to let us know. And I think you might have a little presentation or something for us.
I do. So I think I would like to just stick with the STAR information. And if someone can give me the, oh, I do have the ability to share screen. Great. So we've mentioned STAR assessments multiple times over the last year or so at school committee meeting and at academic subcommittee. And I was asked to give some information about these assessments so that you'd have some context for the discussions that we're having. So why do we have STAR assessments? We need data in order to plan intervention for struggling students more than ever this year because students missed significant time in schools in the spring. We are going to have some students who didn't have complete curriculum and so forth. So we need to identify those areas. We need to plan differentiated, robust classroom instruction, and we need to make curricular adjustments. So those are three kind of buckets that we need data for. One is the middle one here, the plan robust differentiated instruction is your everyday, what happens in the classroom. I need a little more of this, you need a little more of that, and so forth. Curricular adjustments are, what are the materials and the resources we're using that guide us in making those instructional decisions? And sometimes they're outdated and so forth. And so we need to look at data to make sure that we are teaching the most current standards and using the most current methods. And then this blue one over on the corner is that when you teach, using great materials and you have good differentiated instruction, you still have some students who aren't successful with just that regular instruction, and they might need some additional instruction. So we want to identify those students, especially in the younger grades, so that if they're struggling with reading or they're struggling with math, that doesn't become an obstacle for them moving forward, that we can help them gain the learning that they need moving forward. So STAR is an assessment tool. We chose it because it's very widely respected. It is very research-based, and it is easy to administer, provides really good, easy data to look at, and is fairly quick. So those are all things that you want in an assessment. You don't want to over-assess kids and have it take a long extended time. You want good data. You can have the best assessment in the world, but if it can't package data for you in a way that's usable, then it's not as valuable to us. So STAR really meets all of those needs for us. This is a kind of look at a dashboard, my dashboard actually, and it just shows you that we have various assessments. We can open reports and so forth. So the main ones that we use are over here on the left. We use STAR Reading for grades 1 to 12. And that will give us a lot of data about students' reading level, their abilities, where their skill gaps are, and so forth. STAR Early Literacy can be used from pre-K to 3. And STAR Math is used for grades 1 to 12. So this year we did extend our STAR platform to the high school. We had previously had it K to 8, and now we have it all the way through grade 12. In addition, we have STAR Custom, and what STAR Custom enables us to do is tailor a particular test that we want to create for different purposes. So these first 3 are really giving us benchmark data about students' ability and skill deficits. STAR Custom, I could say, I did a unit on fractions and I really want to see how kids are doing on that topic. I can choose questions just about that topic and develop my own assessment. So it really puts a very strong tool in teachers' hands. So I'm just going to quickly go through the main ones. So STAR Early Literacy, as I said, is pre-K through 3. It really looks at skills of beginning readers who can't read independently yet, and it takes about 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes average, some students are slightly shorter, some students are slightly longer, but it's a fairly quick test, and it's statistically vetted and valid to provide good results with those assessments. STAR Reading, as we said, is for grades 1 through 12. So that grade 1 and 2 and a little bit of 3, it varies which assessment you would give depending on where the student is at. And this takes about 30 minutes, and it provides reports on students' reading level, it measures growth and so forth. And then STAR Math, also grades 1 to 12, it's about 20 minutes. These are all computer administered and scored, so there's no hand scoring by teachers. So those are the 3 main assessments that we give. In addition, we have STAR Custom, as I described, that teachers can create their own assessments using STAR Custom. So the real important part of it is the information we get out of it. It's really not useful to be assessing students without using the data that we get. We're not assessing for the sake of assessing, we're assessing so that we can get data to improve our outcomes for students. So this again is a dashboard where there are many, many reports, and I'm only going to go through a couple of those for you, but that tell us a lot of different things. The first report I want to show you is a screening report, right? So we want to do what we call a universal screener on all students. That's every single student K to 12 will be assessed on reading and math, and we will get a level for them that tells us where they are for reading and where they are for math. We do that at the beginning of year, the middle of year, and the end of year so that we can see, are we on track for success for those students? This is an actual report, and if you look closely, you can see I whited out the teacher name, and in some of the reports moving forward, you can see I whited out kids' names as well. This line here shows a benchmark, proficiency, and this is third grade. I honestly don't remember if this was beginning, what time of year this was, but it is our students. And this is exactly the profile you want to see. In any system, even in the best system district in the world, you're going to have most of your students succeeding. Those are all my students in green. Blue are students who are almost there, they're approaching it, and then very few in red and yellow, which are students who are struggling a little bit and may need a little extra attention. It's typical to have 80% of your students in this green zone where they're achieving with just classroom instruction. And then there may be 15 to 20% of students that need an additional intervention in order to get them where they need to be. So you can see here, you can see here that it tells us who's at or above the benchmark, who's on watch, who needs intervention, who needs urgent intervention. And these tests change, obviously. So what students are assessed on at the beginning of year is different than middle of year and different at end of year. So this is a report, again, from the STAR screening report, additional data. So the first slide was the overview. This is every individual student, what their score is, when they were assessed, and it gives us, sorry, I'm having some Zoom, there it goes, sorry. So I couldn't see. It gives us I have to move this, a growth score, a scaled score, proficiency level, zone of proximal development. I'm not going to get into all the details, but these give us different measures about students. Drilling down even more, now you can see I whited out some students' names here. This would tell you particularly this particular student is in your group that you need to watch. These couple students are your group that need intervention and so forth. So it tells you the particular needs of those students. And then you want to look at it. Now I know that I have to pay attention to Joe Smith or whomever, and I now want to know, what do I actually have to pay attention to? So the instructional planning report, this would be for a particular child, says what they're projected to achieve by the end of the year. And it importantly says their instructional reading level. So that's a really important measure. You can see that this child, where the dotted lines are, is well into, it's a third grader, well into this green zone. So this child is actually reading above grade level. But I could have this report for a child who's reading below grade level, and then this additional report would tell me this score suggests that this child is ready for instruction in these skills, needs practice with these skills, and needs perhaps intervention in these skills. So it gives us exact information about how to target instruction. Again, some more very specific information about skills that the child would need. And these are just showing you there's various, like it really drills down to, analyzing plot and how characters shape the plot, all very specific things that are tied to our standards. And another report I just wanted to show you quickly, and just keep in mind there are dozens of reports. I'm only showing you 3, I believe. And this is the third one. This is a longitudinal report. So this would be a particular grade level, perhaps, or we can look at this for students over time. So this was a third grade that I chose. So I didn't have data for kindergarten because we didn't own this product when this child was in kindergarten. But we had some exposure to this product 2 years ago when the child was in first grade, and then last year when the child was in second grade. And you can then start to look longitudinally at how we're doing. This is really valuable for planning curriculum, because if we see that there are significant changes at a grade level 1 year to the next, maybe the standards have changed, maybe our materials are outdated, maybe we have, you know, certain circumstances where, you know, a teacher was ill and we had a substitute and so forth. So we can really look at programmatically things that might influence us and plan to make better, you know, good decisions moving forward. So administering the test, I wanted to mention this because people might think, you know, we're in hybrid and some people are full remote because they chose to be. During the 10 professional development days that we had, teachers K through 12 received professional development on STAR, and we tailored it to their level. So high school didn't have to listen to the professional development for first grade and second grade. And that professional development was on administering STAR and using its data. And it was given, it was given by a person who's worked with us over the last year. And we really focused that professional development on what teachers need. For example, at the high school, they're very new to this because this is the first year we've had it for high school. They needed a lot more on administering the STAR assessment. Elementary has been rocking it. They're doing a great job. They're administering it. They've been using the data. They want to drill down into the data and use it more effectively. So we tailored that professional development to teachers. And we can administer this test and will be administering STAR reading and STAR math, both in person and remotely when necessary. So we had elementary teachers actually pilot administering remotely last spring when we were out. So plans are underway to begin the STAR assessments for the beginning of year. Remember, I said we have 3 benchmarks, beginning, middle, and end. And then the STAR custom is more of a daily, not daily, but, you know, every unit or by topic you can assess. So that really is all of the information that, you know, kind of gives you this perspective on STAR. Again, just going back to now that you've seen some of the reports, you can see how it can be used to plan classroom instruction, it can be used to make curricular adjustments, and it can be used to plan intervention for struggling students.
Great, thank you, Kate. That was very informative. Are there any questions or comments from anyone on the committee about the information that Kate's presented? Okay. I don't see any. I just wanted to make 2 observations. One, we've been talking about the district strategic plan now for a couple of years, and we discussed this MTSS, the intervention system, and this is one step that we have that puts us to be able to implement that tiered system of support. So it's really great to get a little more information, to see something, you know, that's tangible, that we can see how that works into our strategic plan. And the second is just an observation that, you know, we've heard from a lot of parents, you know, what was the learning loss? You know, how are we going to know? And this right here is that exact tool that we need to be able to get a measure of where the students are and where we might need to ramp up some instruction. So it's really great to see we already have the tools in place. And especially for the younger kids, they're familiar with it because they've been using it. So it's not as if it's going to be new to everybody.
That's
so
right.
It's very exciting that we do have this in place. So thank you.
I just want to end by saying I was on a call with superintendents and assistant superintendents and the commissioner today, and they mentioned, the commissioner mentioned districts that are looking for and struggling to find good assessments for the purposes that I just talked about for the last 10 minutes or so. And it is something that everybody's looking to do for what you mentioned. It's good practice for every year, but it's particularly important this year.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Kate on that? Nope, seeing none. Thank you again for a wonderful presentation, and we look forward to hearing more, throughout the year as we administer and also any other tools, that we have out there. This is great. Thank you. Next up was subcommittee reports. I believe we've covered everything that our subcommittees have been reviewing. If there's anyone who would like to comment on anything at this point, I'll take just a moment in case there is a subcommittee that wanted to report out on anything. Seeing no one's making for the unmute, I'll assume that that's not the case. We have a bunch of meetings scheduled in the upcoming weeks. Next up is correspondence. I want to bring up an email that we received from the town of Phillipston, directed to Dr. Casavant. It was an invitation to attend the next select board. I'm not sure if it's the next select board meeting. There might be one this evening, but they're meeting on the 23rd. They had a couple of topics they wanted to discuss. One was the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, and the second would be what we're doing with the Phillipston Elementary School. So Dr. Kazan, I'm just going to turn that over to you if you have any other information or questions for us that you want to ask to prepare you for your meeting with the Phillipston Board of Selectmen.
So I think, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the first topic in terms of the first question, regarding how did the regional agreement, the RAC committee become formed? What was kind of the impetus? What was, I think that's fairly straightforward. And we've already sent information through an information request to one of the select board members in regards to that. I think the second question about what is next for Phillipston, I think is a if I'm saying that correctly, I want to make sure that I don't overstate it or understate it, but I think that that's really the conversation. You heard Jack today speaking about, if it remains a school, I think that's good for everyone. And there's a lot of things that have got to happen, and other options, if quite frankly, my goal is just get to the point where we can have a civil conversation about that, without some of the, hyperbole that's gone on for the last 2-3 weeks. I think that's really my goal. I don't know if that we can answer that. I think that this is a joint conversation. The school committee does, in fact, programmatically, in terms of the schools, is in charge of that. But I think before that, we need to be able to have a civil conversation. And that's my hope. And once we can master that without trying to be flip, I think that then we can have some serious conversations. But in terms of what I'll be doing on the 23rd, I'm happy to, of course, address the regional agreement conversation. But I truly believe that the second part of that question should be and has to be a conversation between those affected. And so I don't know. That's not really an answer. It's just really more of a process, issue. But I think that that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, and I would say I agree. I think, for you to at least engage in the initial discussion to try to put that team together of people who can have a more in-depth discussion to find out, what the town of Phillipston is thinking and what our thought process is, so we can work together to figure out, what the ultimate plan for the building is and the actions that need to get taken. So we'll look for an update from you at our next meeting.
Yep.
And if we need to take any action at that point, we certainly can pursue it then. But in the interim, we'll wait to hear how that discussion goes and what action steps come out of it.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none. We are just at the end of our regular business for the evening. Just to note that upcoming meetings, just to remind everybody once again, we have our district-wide town meeting on Saturday, this Saturday, the 19th at 2 o'clock. on the high school game field. Enter through the middle school doors, and you'll be routed appropriately, handicap parking in the back. Our next regularly scheduled school committee meeting at this point is Wednesday, October 7th at 5 o'clock. We're going to shoot for in person again. So we will do our best to make that happen. If not, we will have to default to streaming via Zoom. But at this point, we'd like to try and get to in-person meeting. And that is that. So the last order of business is we do need to go into executive session, and we will be coming out of executive session. So I would entertain a motion to enter executive session for reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation with the NDEA and or the UFCW, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. The meeting will return into open session immediately following. I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
I think Mrs. Trifilo, do I have a second?
Yes.
And Mr. Marks has a second. We'll do roll call. Let me get my list out. Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So again, we'll be entering executive session, and then we will be coming back out of executive session once we're done. So thank everybody for hanging in there so far, and we will be back hopefully shortly. Okay, I think we have everybody, so I will call the meeting of the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee back into open session. We have to vote on a memorandum of understanding with the NDEA. So I entertain a motion to accept the memorandum of understanding as presented with the NDEA.
So move.
I have a motion from Mr. Mason. Do I have a second?
So moved.
I'll second that. Barbara.
Second.
So Mr. Marks has seconded. Any questions, comments, or concern about the memorandum of understanding? Okay, we did just go into executive session and vote on that, so now we're doing this vote in public. We will do roll call. Mrs. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Marks.
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson.
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal.
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo.
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hughes says yes. So we have unanimously approved the memorandum of understanding with the NDEA as was presented to us to cover the hybrid learning. Last chance, anybody have any last comments? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I have a motion by Mr. Mason. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Mrs. Mattson to adjourn. Roll call, Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Marks,
Yes.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So we have adjourned our meeting. I thank everybody for coming. I thank all the public for watching us, and we will see you next time. Thank you.